I'm glad to be on with you guys. Very glad to do this. And I thought I'd start with Ephesians 5:18, which says, "And do not get drunk with wine, for that is debauchery," or a sensual living, sensuality leading to death, really. But be filled with the Holy Spirit. And I think the implication there is to be sober-minded. And then it goes on to say, addressing one another's psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing, making melody to the Lord with your heart, giving thanks always and for everything to God the Father in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, submitting to one another out of reverence for Christ. And so we're going to talk about alcohol today. I had several topics planned, but I think this is the big one to talk about with these special guests and dear friends of mine. And I wanted to start with just a catch-up. So, CJ, you're in the middle of a move. Tell us a little bit about the refuge in Winterset, Iowa, and your big move, your big news. Give us a quick update.
Quick update, yeah. So the refuge, our mission statement is taking the light of the gospel to the darkness of addiction. And that's what we've been doing in some form or another since 2016. That's when we started, but it was very grassroots, a lot of non-residential ministry. I mean, I guess some of it was residential because sometimes people were living in our house. We'd have guys living in our house and guys living in the houses of some of our church folks. And we launched our residential program in 2020. And since that time, I think we counted up that we've had roughly 74 men come through the doors of the refuge. Now, wow, I'd love to tell you that all those guys graduated and they're just thriving now, but that's not true. And some of those guys only stayed a day or two. So, but we still have, I'd say, somewhere between 20 and 35 guys that we stay in contact with and that are out there and doing well. So that's good. But we've been renting this farmhouse since 2020, and we could house 6 guys in the house for 5 years now. And we ended up getting our own place, a barn dominium, and it had a lot more work to do in it than we thought. And Ben Funkhauser, our executive director, and I both, neither one of us are contractors, and we don't know anything about this kind of stuff. So we've learned a lot in this process, but of just kind of renovating this barn dominium and getting it ready. But we just got moved in this last weekend on Saturday, still cleaning out some of the old stuff out at the old place from the garage. And we accumulated a lot of, just in 5 years, a lot of things that we did not need. And some of the residents actually helped us out with that. They would be in the program and they'd just kind of find little trinkets and things and that they wanted to keep. And then when they would leave, they wouldn't take it with them. So yeah, but no, it's good. It's a change. We're about 25 minutes away from where we were. So we were north of Winterset and now we're south of Winterset. But it's good. We're looking forward to it, and we'll have more room for more men. So yeah, there's my short update. You're like,
yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's funny. You sparked a business idea. If I want to make money in America, just open a storage unit facility, because we all have these trinkets and things we want to keep and all this, and we have so much junk. And we end up, and like I'm talking about myself right now. I have all this stuff that I want to keep, but I need a storage unit, and so I think most Americans probably fall into that. We romanticize our junk, really, and I need to be a minimalist, I think. But anyway, yeah. Well, thank you, CJ, and then Jim. There's always stuff going on at Freedom Farm there in Boone, North Carolina. Which is a great place to go snow skiing here in a few months, right?
Yeah. So things going on here, similar to CJ and the refuge. We've been looking at getting a centralized campus for our program. We serve roughly 100 people a year, and we're spread out over 2 different counties. And there's a lot of inefficiencies there. So we've had this idea of building a campus for years now, and we've raised some money, and we had a piece of property. We still have this piece of property, and we got a company to come and do all the preliminary work to help us, design what we're after. And the beginning of all of that, after we got renderings and everything, they discovered the soil was not good for what we were wanting to do or to build anything really. So they said, you need to find another piece of property. But
no.
that was kind of a bump in the road, but the Lord's plans are always the right ones. So we've actually been investigating another piece of property, which is actually bigger and would suit better what we're trying to do. So we're praying that continues to progress. We're at the point to where I've toured it. We've had a civil engineer take a look at it, and we've talked to the building department, and now the board has to come together and make a decision. We're waiting for the leaves to fall off here so that we can get a really good view of the property, because right now it's hard to see everything. We're up in the mountains, for anybody that doesn't know, Western North Carolina mountains. So yeah, and right now the biggest thing that we're focused on is that we have a banquet coming up at the end of the month, October 30th, and yes, we're in the middle of that, getting people to RSVP and donate to the silent auction and things like that. So that's kind of like taking priority right now about a lot of things. You guys know I know there's been a big controversy with the guy, that Michael Tate, that was the Newsboys. But not him, but the speaker at my banquet is the original lead singer of the Newsboys. He did the first 6 albums with them. His name is John James. He's from Australia. Is where they started, in Australia. But he did after their success at the beginning, he got into drugs and alcohol, and it basically took everything from him. And he's been restored now, and his whole deal is to now he travels the whole country, actually internationally, and just shares about the power of Christ to change the heart and addiction. So we're excited about that.
That's great. Yeah. I like the Newsboys. I listen to Newsboys stuff. I'm a little disappointed in what Michael Tate said that he was involved in, but I was really pleased with how he said it, how he brought repentance and sin, and like it seemed to be a genuine brokenness. And I don't know a whole lot about that whole situation, but the thing that I read, his confession and his asking for forgiveness was really good. So I was pleased to hear that. And Peter Furler, I know that Steve Ham, our friend in Cincinnati, Pastor Steve Ham, he got to tour some of those guys around from Newsboys when they came to visit in that area and saw the Ark. And he told me he got to talk to Peter Furler, I think, and Phil Joel maybe is who he toured around from New Zealand, who used to be in Newsboys. But John James, that's great. So he's going to be your main speaker. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right. Well, we've got some questions we want to get to from our live audience. So we'll get to that in a minute. But before we do, I just wanted to hit on this. This is a little bit dated, but that's kind of how the stats come out. So these are 2023 stats from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, which is part of the U.S. Department of Transportation. The NHTSA reported, and this is the stat I wanted to tell you guys about, and then we'll get to the questions. Every day, about 34 people in the United States, this is 2023, and I'm sure it's not any better, 34 people every day die in drunk driving crashes. That's one person every 42 minutes. And a total of 12,429 people died in alcohol-impaired driving traffic deaths. These deaths were all preventable. That's what they're article says, and we can put the link out there for people to read this, but generally you think about somebody dying every 42 minutes. And if our podcast lasts about 42 minutes today, someone will have died during that time, which is tragic to think about, because some of those people who die don't know Jesus Christ and may be bound for hell. That's the reality of what we deal with and the urgency of it. And so I thought I would just throw that out to you guys. We talked about the heart of addiction, and with alcohol, I think a lot of people think alcohol is no big deal. And I just wanted to get some of your thoughts on that stat in particular, how sad that is. So Jim, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, it was interesting that when I was going through that article, I don't know if you caught it. I think that number 12,000 and 12,500 or whatever, is people that blew over a 0.08. So you had to have a 0.08 or above. But they said there was about another 3,000 or so people that were under 0.08. So so they still had alcohol in their system, but they don't get counted as being a drunk driving fatality because they're not legally drunk. So
they're not alcohol impaired because
right.
They're not 0.08. They're a little bit less, but they are alcohol impaired by any stretch. Yeah.
Yeah, but for a 12,000, 500 number to add another 2,500 or so, I mean that significantly increases, how many people, or it lessens the amount of time that there's somebody dying. So it's pretty terrible. Alcohol, it's very commonly looked at as the least problematic of substances that people abuse. I think that's natural for people because it's so widely accepted in our culture here. I mean, it's sold everywhere. It's glorified on television. I don't know if you guys, I don't want to tell on myself about shows I watch, but my brother really struggles with alcohol, and that's his main thing that he has struggled with in his life as far as substances go. And we like to watch television shows and talk about them through texting, and there's been many shows. I'm like, I can't believe how much they drink on the show. It's like they're just drinking the whole time. It's like that's not real. They couldn't do that in real life, but but why is it that they do that in the show? They just constantly got a glass of liquor, that they're sipping on or something. Anyway,
this is water.
Yeah, and squirt. Okay, we got water and squirt. But the sad fact is that alcohol is, in my opinion, one of the most destructive of the substances. I have been physically dependent on alcohol. Won't get into that whole story, but I went through that, and I've also had experience with other drugs, opiates mainly. And I've had to go through a withdrawal detox on both of those things, alcohol and opioids. And, I would personally tell you that in my experience, I'll take an opioid withdrawal every day of the week, as opposed to an alcohol withdrawal. Alcohol withdrawal was much worse. It was scary it was scary. I mean, you're miserable on the other, but you're absolutely scary. But yeah, the wide acceptance, the wide accessibility to alcohol makes it dumbs it down. In college culture, it's just thought of today that your kids are going to go to keggers, and that they're gonna experience drinking in college. It's just it's part of our culture in such a degree that most people say it's not a big deal, but it's a big deal. I mean, if you think about that number of deaths from alcohol, back in 2000, the year 2000, that's how many people were dying of drug overdoses back then. It was still a big deal back then. And so yeah, it's it kills. Alcohol kills. It kills. It ruins families. It's a miserable. You guys have all dealt with people that have just been solely alcohol drinkers, and it can be very damaging to a person's life all around.
Well, before we get to CJ, you nailed what I was thinking about is we always see the good side of it. You know, the commercials and the movies and the TV shows always show like it's just part of life. It's good. It helps. It relaxes. It does this. It does that. But I remember a story where my youngest son and I we were going to some baseball games. We went, and by the way, Cincinnati Reds are in the playoffs. They lost last night, but anyway, they're in the playoffs, so we're happy. You know, it happens about once every 50 years. No, I'm just kidding. It seems like it. But we went to a baseball game in Detroit, and then we drove up to Toronto. This is in like 2016, 17, something like that. We drove up to Toronto, and when you could cross over the border with ease, and we had to ride the subway car. And on the way home, it was the Yankees and Toronto Blue Jays, and they were fussing and fighting, and people were yelling profanities, and they were really drunk. And I remember my son, he was probably 15, 16 at the time. And, or maybe even younger, maybe he was like 14, but I remember like him being really scared. I was kind of scared, but I was thinking, I'm going to have to get in a fight. I'm going to have to pull these people apart. I'm going to have to be, in this. And I remember afterwards saying, we see all those commercials and TV shows that present the good side, but this, and it ended up with people yelling cuss words, get thrown off the bus, and, and all this. I mean, and it was going to be violent right there near us. And I said, that is alcohol. That's the effect of alcohol. We don't see that on the commercials, TV shows, but that's it. And I think he doesn't drink. He tells me he doesn't drink today, and I'm so pleased. But I think that instance kind of showed him the ugly side of it that he was sheltered from, because I stopped drinking long before he was born. So I was glad that happened, and glad the way it turned out. But I think that's the thing you're hitting on. And then I would even say, like, you added those extra 2,500, 3,000 from the article. But even what about drug-affected driving? That's like marijuana. That's other things. We don't even think about, or psychotropic drugs or psychedelic drugs that microdosing.
Yeah, they don't even. A lot of times they don't even get tested.
Right.
Yeah, they're not looking for that. So how many people are on the road that are? I think I read something like 1 in 5 are on some kind of medication or substance that can affect your driving.
Ugh.
Maybe that's too many, but that's a lot. So you're driving and you see people like swerving and cutting. You're either thinking they're on their phone, or they're on something, or they're just being very selfish and sinful in how they're driving. But CJ, what would you add to this?
I mean, you guys covered most of the bases.
We covered it.
But you did. Yeah, I probably don't have a lot to say, but I might have a little. So I would just, the thing that I would maybe add to is like, well, it's just piggybacking a little bit of what Jim said. I think of the majority of the men that we've ministered to at the refuge has been alcohol. Alcohol related, way more than the drugs. It's more alcohol. And the thing that a lot of them say too is the struggle that they have is like, they're sometimes envious of the guys that have the drug struggles, because they're like, hey, I mean, I could just get rid of, you guys can just get rid of your contacts and all that. He goes, our drugstore is like, every time we walk in a grocery store, or we walk into a convenience store, there it is. Yeah. And I don't know about how it is in your states, but in our gas stations, you go up to the register and they have that little shot,
fireball,
just right in your face. It's just right there.
Yep.
And so, I mean, the alcohol is just a huge, and for guys that are trying to get free from it, it seems like it's a lot harder on the guys. And then, like you said, Jim, detoxing off alcohol is way worse. Probably the only one that might be closer is like heroin. Like heroin, I think, is pretty bad. And it's been a long time since I've messed with any of that stuff. But I think of the guys that are on like speed, meth or cocaine and things like that. All they got to do, and I'm not minimizing this, but most of the time they just sleep and eat well and get rested, and they're fine.
Right.
they come out of that. But the alcohol, I mean, there's the shakes, there's the sweats, and if you're not, I mean, you got to really watch. That's why I mean, I think sometimes they got to detox in a hospital under some close supervision because they could die.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, and here, and I don't want to go too far on this one, but I think of even in our churches, in our church circles, I don't know.
Yeah.
It is becoming maybe more and more popular, even in like small group gatherings where there will be alcohol. Like just, and I'm not saying anybody's getting drunk, but they're sure it doesn't take many drinks to where you're not sober minded anymore. I would argue that it takes very little to where you're not sober minded. And I just think that and I think you think about that when you have a small group of 10 or 15 people, you don't know who struggles with that. Why would you even, but I see that being, and even amongst pastors where they'll get together and, in the reformed circles that we love and where they'll smoke cigars and drink, scotch and whatever. And that's kind of the thing. And I just think that it is celebrated quite, and I think there's the line, it's a slippery slope, but I'm not saying, I mean, I choose abstinence because it's just wise, and it would be selfish for me to choose anything other than that. That's just where I'm at personally, in what I do, and it would be a selfish decision. And I have a hard time sometimes for, especially leaders. I don't know. I don't want to get too far into this one, but
no, and I think Proverbs 31 is talking to leaders and not to drink alcohol. It's not why, because they're going to take advantage of the people under their care. And Proverbs 31, you guys look it up. That's talks about that. But Jim, you and I were part of the Christian Missionary Alliance, and when I became part of that denomination, you had to sign that you weren't going to drink anymore. And I remember going up to Colorado to the home office, the base, and they were talking about it. And there were some guys in my group, young guys, younger than me, and they said, "Man, this is legalism. I don't like this rule. They can't tell us we can't drink, and that and all this." And I said, "Well, guys, you don't have to be ordained with this denomination. You can go find another denomination that will let you drink, give you the freedom or whatever. You don't have to be a part of this. This is something you sign on to willingly." And of course, for me, that was something I had already come to as a personal conviction. I know you guys are the same place, but was it the same for you with the Christian Missionary Alliance when you got involved?
You had to make that when you were going through the ordination. You had to make that commitment. You have to do it to be an elder at the church, to serve. But like what kind of CJ was alluding to, adding to the cultural aspect of it, that many churches, there's like this need to not be legalistic and kind of show you my Christian liberty. And again,
so
I know plenty of people that can have a beer that I go to church with, and it doesn't ruin their lives, and they don't drink all 6 of them.
Right.
And so I know a lot of those people, but the like what you were saying, like if you have a group of 15 people, you don't know, what you're presenting, the kind of temptation you're presenting. And I think there's been multiple times where I've been invited to things like outside of church by church people. And when I showed up, there was like "Hey, come here and let me talk to you for a second." And they're like, "Hey, I'm really sorry. I didn't even think about it before I gave you the invitation, but I'm serving beer here. And I don't want that to, people are having this conversation with me." And I've always said, "Hey, look, as long as people aren't getting drunk, that's fine. I'm not going to be bothered by it." But they never invited me again. I was never invited again to things, and that was noticeable. It was very noticeable. So you kind of, when people know your stance on it, they'll just like disinvite you from fellowship, which, doesn't sound good. And, I was thinking of something I just learned recently, part of the cultural acceptance of it all. For the longest time, I'm sure you guys remember, they said that, like, actually medically speaking, having a glass of wine a day is really good for you, or having one drink a day is really good for you. They gave you all kinds of reasons. They've recently come out and said, no, that's actually totally wrong. It's really bad for you. You shouldn't drink at all. So,
I heard that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
I think there was some purpose in that.
yeah, I have memories
Yeah.
of women pregnant drinking a glass of red wine, saying that their doctor recommended that they drink one glass. They didn't tell you the glass was this big. But anyway.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. That's it's just a sad stat to read. Just very heartbreaking. And again, we bring it up because our culture says the opposite. This is great. This is fun. This enhances your experience. And we're the people who are saying, okay, but there's a very big downside. And just bringing up the drunk driving deaths is one of them. But I think there are other downsides that we've kind of talked about. So that's good. Thank you, guys. Well, two questions.
I want to say one upside of it all. You probably experienced it. You could ask your kids about it, Mark, because your kids are kind of the age. But there is like a resurgence in the younger generations now, warding off alcohol and promiscuous sex and stuff. There's actually statistically, and it's not necessarily they're seeing if people are becoming more overtly Christian. They're just people saying that, like, there's nothing good about that, and it kind of will stunt my growth and success. So why would I even want to do that? And so there's a lot of people saying no more of that. So that's encouraging. Yeah,
I mean, Charlie Kirk, who just recently was assassinated, said that he doesn't drink and it didn't enhance, and he was speaking to young people. So I wasn't going to bring up any current events, but
no, but
I was glad to hear him say
his specific audience are the people that are really being shown statistically to be moving away from that cultural mindset. So maybe there's hope for a cultural shift,
Yeah. All right. 2 questions from our audience. This is live, which is always an adventure. The first question is very different than the second, but I want to cover them. First question, for the leaders of residential programs. So that's you guys. I'm out. I'm out of that world anymore. They say, I could speak to it. I'm being silly. What guidelines do you have in place to keep yourself and your families safe while reaching out to the addicted? Wow. CJ's like inviting people into his home. He's telling us about that.
Yeah, we haven't
that doesn't sound safe.
We haven't done that for a long while.
No, I mean, I admire that. I'm kidding.
Oh boy.
Well, I'll say this just about safety. And I was talking to my pastor about it yesterday. It's so funny. But, I think people like the whole phrase, be safe, when people say that. And I've said that a couple of times. But so I'm not mad at people that say it because I've said it. But I hate that phrase, be safe. Hey, stay safe, be safe, keep safe. It's like, I'm not really in control of that. When I leave, get in my car, drive on the road, I'm not safe. I mean, I'm driving as safely as I can, but what about the guy that's not, or the drunk driver that's going to crash into me? What about the train that I had to stop for? What about just, a squirrel runs off and on the road and I try to avoid him and I'm all, it's like, so this stay safe, keep safe, be safe. The idea of that to me is a little bit like it's just impossible for me. And nowadays people are beating people up at gas stations and there's shootings and there's, all kinds of stuff. So but you do read about God as our refuge, but I think about that in the way that David would run. David had a promise that he was going to be king. So when he was running from Saul, he knew, I'm going to be king. And so God, you've got to keep me safe. You're my refuge. You're the one, that's going to fulfill your promise. And when God makes a promise, we know he's going to keep it. but I think being safe and God being our refuge is about, not that trouble isn't going to come, because that's ridiculous. We're gonna need him to keep us safe, because there are storms and trials and danger. But the thing about safety is, I'm eternally safe right now. My soul is in his hands. Whenever he calls me home, in whatever way that may take shape, I hope on the pickleball court, honestly. However he takes me home, whenever he takes me home, I'm safe. I'm always safe in his arms and in his will. So I have confidence to trust God and to speak the truth in love. And so I think some of that had to be said before this, but I'll throw it over to you guys. Who wants to take on that question? Because I think it's a really good, legitimate question.
No,
no doubt.
I think, Jim, I'm going to appeal to Jim. Honestly, like, I'm sometimes convicted of this particular one, because I do think that I have in the past. I don't think I'm as bad now. You'd have to ask my wife, but I do think in the past that I just kind of assumed that they would be okay, and they were really involved in every aspect of what I do. And I don't know that was, like I said, even having people in our homes, and there were things about that I think were good, but there was also things about it that wasn't real. It wasn't right. It definitely wasn't safe at times. So Jim, you go ahead, and I'll come back.
Well, similar to what you were just saying, CJ. I think it's pretty common at the beginning. Like I've been doing this for 15 years now, and my early days of doing this look much different than my days now. I have a couple memories. One time before I had kids, I got a call at 2:30 in the morning, and I ended up getting in the car and going to a crack house to pull a guy out that was scared to death. And he asked me, and my wife came with me. So I remember asking her, I was like, "Do you want to do this? I mean, you could stay home." She's like, "I'd rather be with you." And I was like, "Okay," And so that, probably looking back on it, probably wasn't very wise, to do. I've actually had guys come to my house before they because of my relationship with them. I've known them for a while. They call me up and say, "Hey, I want to come back to Freedom Farm, but can I go to your house for a couple of days and kind of get to feeling a little bit better before showing up at the Freedom?" And I've let people do that, but we don't do that type of thing anymore today. I bring my family around them for just events. Like tonight, for instance, our church cooks for us, and I always bring my kids with me to eat dinner with the Freedom Farm guys, and so we're all at the church in one room, and we'll do things like that, like more like meals together, that we invite families to. David Michael, that works with me, he's pretty good about having guys over his house for like Sunday lunch, and things like that. But it's always like in a controlled environment like that. I live a half an hour away from the ministry, so I'm here during the day with the guys, and then I drive home, and it's kind of disconnected from the ministry. But I think it's important because I would guess the questioner came up with that because of their experience with people doing some risky things that, like, man, are you sure that's a good idea? And I think the answer to that is, we tend to do some unwise things in this type of ministry, looking back on it. But at the end of the day, like Mark was saying, the Lord keeps us safe, and so we're glad that even in our unwise decisions, He's there with us. So,
Amen. And when I took my son, who 13, 14, to a Toronto Blue Jays, New York Yankees game, riding on their it wasn't a subway, but it was like a train or whatever, riding on this public transportation, I thought we were safe, and a fight just about broke out. What if they had guns, and what if, and all this stuff? I mean, we were not safe. We thought we were. We were just going to a baseball game, and had plans and fun, and it was really upsetting. It really upset him quite a lot, which I'm kind of glad he experienced, right? I don't want to protect him from everything, I'm glad it didn't turn into something super awful, but it was awful enough for him to really be impacted by that. And so really in everyday life, it's hard. I think doing ministry, I mean, I had a couple of Cincinnati Reds fans over to my house last night that I didn't know super well, but they, I wasn't really safe with them in the house. I'm just kidding. And but like you have people over, you do things. We don't really know people as well as we think we know them. And we just need to be following Christ, trusting God, and doing faithful ministry. CJ, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think a lot of it too is lots of communication with your wife, especially, and asking is this too much? Like, do you feel like, because I know, do you feel too close? Because I know, like, you want your wife and kids to be involved in what you do and to one degree or another, but you just can't. Right. You got to make sure. I think a lot of it's just a lot of communication with, and I have not. I'm saying that because I've probably failed at that at times, but my wife's a little more outspoken the last decade of our marriage than the first few years. So I always joke around with her saying, I think we've overcorrected a little bit, because she used to be very silent and quiet. And I could just kind of drag her on. And now sometimes she pushes back a lot more than I want her to.
But I think that's a good for married people. When you have a spouse, they can help you. Even the women that are doing residential ministry and are married to husbands and have, like, you need to use that spouse as a barometer to help you. Am I overdoing it? And then you want to be careful not to overshare with them and bring them into really hard things. I was driving here from work this morning, and after the train, I was gone and coming here, and I thought, something flashed in my mind. The way I was listening to a podcast, and they said something about, I won't get into the details, but when they said something about a certain topic, I immediately went to a guy I counseled, and I remember the phrase that he said, and it sickened me the way he said it. And it had to do with children. It was awful. And I thought, oh man, I don't even want to remember that. Like, why is that in my mind? But I thought, well, Lord, you can redeem it, And I never shared that phrase with my wife because she wouldn't be able to get it out of her mind ever. For me, I can kind of move on. I don't think about it. But today, in the way that the podcasting person was talking, it triggered that thought of that person and how he said something to a little child that was disgusting. And it all kind of came back. And I thought, well, Lord, you have to redeem this. You have to help me. But I think protecting our families from even the phrases and the stories that you guys, we all hear about is important too. Like, I need to be able to talk about it, but most of the things that I deal with in counseling, you guys deal with in counseling, we need to take to Jesus, because we're not capable to put them on our shoulders and handle it. We've got to take it to the cross. But it does help to have a trusted Christian friend, somebody you can talk to about some things. You don't have to give the gory details, but it's nice. I have police friends that are, the police force, and I always tell them, like, if you have stuff that you need to talk about that's horrific, please call me and talk to me about it, because partly I'm not going to remember it or think about it. I'm not going to dwell on it, but I want to be able to be a help to them. Of course, they have other guys on the force that they can talk to, but that's just an example. But the stuff we hear about is equally as bad, maybe not equally, but almost as bad as what police guys do. So I think that's one issue too to protect. The other question, so if I didn't answer that, we'll do live podcasts. We may move these to a different day, but anyway, the second question I want to get to before we wrap up is, this says, planning meetings and talking with our pastors and staff about addiction outreach. We are trying to educate the congregation as well. What can we say to reassure everyone that this is a good idea? Well, it might not be a good idea, right? I'm joking.
Hang on for the ride. It might be bumpy.
But CJ, why don't you answer that first?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it is a good idea to because, again, we don't want to be churches that, as you like to say, that punt on first down, right? And I know you've tried to change that because you don't think it's the best, but I still think it's
second down.
Second down, right? Or whatever. Punt. The down you're supposed to punt on is fourth down, right?
Fourth down.
Fourth
always.
Down. Always. And so
but you can run a fake punt.
You
can run a fake punt.
You could.
Well, we won't get it. Well, I'm going too far.
Yeah, we'll get. But I would say, I just don't think. I think it's a good idea. I think you got to have a strong. It's good to have it. You want somebody to kind of lead the way. Ultimately, but I think it takes a team of people and people that are on board, and it does help to have. I mean, that's where I'm super thankful for Redeemer Church, and Pastor Jason from the very beginning was on board with this, and he talked about this kind of stuff and having a heartbeat for those that were struggling with life-dominating sin, addiction issues, idolatry, whatever you want to, it was sin issues, and really pressing into that. He spoke about those things from the pulpit and every other kind of, and in small group. I mean, it's just a part of it's part of the culture of our church. And so I think you got to have leadership that's going to be on board, because if not, it's too hard for one or two people just to do it by themselves. You'll burn out if you don't have a team of people, most likely, unless you're crazy like Jim Quigley, right? But yeah, you need a team of people that are going to be like, hey, this is a ministry of our church. We're going to be about this, just like we are a lot of other issues and things that we're about. We want to help, women and children. We want to help those in it, but I think you gotta go all in on it, and you need a strong team, and you need to be trusting in the sufficiency of the scriptures and the power of the gospel, and taking God at his word, and not trying to do some kind of plug and play. Not to say there isn't some good, I know, like, you have some great curriculum. We have some great curriculum on the Addiction Connection website. If you go to that website, we have a lot of good stuff that can be utilized to kind of kickstart. There's some other decent ones out there, but there's some bad ones out there too. And that are just not, don't have an AA or NA meeting in your basement. And I would say don't do Celebrate Recovery. There's better things that you can do. If you're a solid Bible preaching, gospel centered church, you can do better than those things. So I want you guys to jump in, or I'll keep going down this.
The only thing I would add is, I think that everything that TJ said was right. You need to have support within your local congregation that this is what you guys want to do. But I would kind of just add that I wouldn't get so disappointed if maybe they tell you that this is not something they want to focus on, and don't let that bring you into some dark places. Like, these people don't care about, there's only so much a congregation can focus on as far as specific things and people's needs. And if this is not one that they want to, then maybe figure out why the Lord's calling you to do it, and maybe there's a outside of your church something you can participate in, and your church support, maybe directly, but not necessarily house it, if that makes sense. But if it's a real true investigative thing where you guys want to investigate how we can serve the addicted, then I think you need to be real open and answer a lot of questions. The first question, safety. That's going to be a big one right off the bat that needs to be addressed. And don't let those things. People like us that work with addicts all the time. I don't feel unsafe around them. And that can make me insensitive to other people that feel very unsafe around them. So
right.
I don't want to be that. I want to make sure I minister to my brothers and sisters in how we go about this, and answer their questions. And then those are teaching opportunities. Like you said, your pastor is teaching from the pulpit. If you've got a general question, it's in the minds of everybody about this specific thing. I'm sure that the Bible has something to say about it. We can learn together, so.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, you can contact us, call our phone line. Kirby Johnson answers that, and he can talk to you and connect you to different people too. And I'm sure any of the three of us are willing to talk to people and help. But I would say there are different ways to skin a cat. So sorry, cat lovers, but you don't have to just have a group meeting. I know a church like Jacob Gardner in Montana.
I was going to bring that back up. I'm glad you are.
He does the one-on-one thing now. He started a group thing, and now they're doing more one-on-one counseling and disciple making. There's ways to do that. And he was just on the podcast with you, CJ. You interviewed him at the previous podcast from this one. Mm-hmm. And you can talk about that in a second. But I was going to say also, what we're doing at First Baptist Jacksonville at the Nocatee campus is on Monday nights, we're having Freedom at First is what we're calling it. And so Monday nights from 6:30 to 8, we're having people come in and gather, and we're loving them, listening to them, teaching them. But it's more about fellowship than just, we're going to give you a ton of information. And Monday nights don't look like Sunday mornings, or even our Wednesday night. We have a time of fellowship, and we break off into as small groups as possible with 2 leaders at each table, sitting down with one person or maybe 2 or 3, depending on how big it is. And we're launching this in another couple of weeks. And it may not work, but I've got a team of leaders. I'm talking to them about what we're trying to do and how we're trying to go about this, and getting them on board with, this isn't a church function that looks like a Sunday morning, but it is a church function in that it's fellowship, it's teaching. Obviously, we're going to have the truth there. We're going to talk about the Bible, but it's also sitting down and listening and assessing, because you're going to have people that come who don't know where the book of Genesis is in the Bible. They just don't know. And then you're going to have people that come in and they're like Jim Quigley. They went to seminary, Bible college, or whatever, and they're coming in and they're struggling, and they know where everything is in the Bible, maybe even better than you and I do. And so you're going to have this spectrum. So get to know people, listen to them, guide them, and help them, give them simple homework things and simple things to do. So that's kind of what we're going to do on Monday nights. And I'm hoping to expand that addiction outreach into a prayer outreach night. I'm even hoping to have an autism, kind of a care group, autism support night, group meeting night on Monday nights, at that same time. And then family members of the addicted, family members of a prodigal, a prodigal son or prodigal daughter, and have grief care, not grief share, but we call it grief care. Ernie Baker has developed a really great program. And so it's 8 weeks. And so do grief care that night as well, and have a menu of services or things we offer, maybe not every week. The addiction one's going to go on, for a long time. But the goal in our addiction curriculum, we're using the Next Steps to Be Transformed, is to take counselees and turn them into counselors, so that they're not perpetually always an addicted person, but hey, you're coming in as somebody who needs to be taught, but we want you to become a teacher, a disciple maker. You're a disciple first, and we're always a disciple, but you're going to become a disciple maker. And so Monday nights, the vision for it is to start with addiction and start with some different things, but eventually grow it into a broader spectrum of things to offer people. And we're doing it. I'm not launching it with like formal, a lot of announcements in the pulpit and this and that. I'm more or less doing it grassroots, talking to people organically, having conversations, and meeting. We had a little hot dog gathering that was really great, and just to talk to people that I knew were interested in it. And so I haven't made a big rollout of an official thing yet. I'm hoping to build my team and see if we can get some traction, but we already have about 4 or 5 people that want help from this, and we haven't even advertised it. So there's lots of ways to skin the cat and do this. CJ, would you tell us a little bit about Jacob Gardner before we end?
Yes. No, I was glad that you brought, because as Jim was talking too, I need to bring that up, and then you beat me to the punch. But just a little more detailed. So Jacob Gardner, he's part of the Addiction Connection family, and he was part of our
Yes.
church here. It's just been awesome to watch that guy grow and develop and just become the man of God that he is today. But so they started at their church, him and his dad and his mom, Keith and Lindy Gardner. They started a GCR, and they called it Grace-Centered Recovery. So again, it was a kind of very similar to what we do here and what a lot of other churches will try to do. There's some decent things out there, attempts to, but it doesn't have to be. And they had some success. They had some, there was a lot of people coming for a while, but the last couple of years, they just saw the numbers were kind of going down. People weren't real engaged. And Jacob just thought, you know what, we need to emphasize one-on-one counseling, biblical counseling, and discipleship. Right. And so we're going to he's still going to continue to offer that, but it's just not, it's not like a once a week program like it was. They're still going to minister to people that are struggling in the same ways, but they're going to do it more and they're trying to equip more counselors and disciple makers in their church is really what their idea is, so that they can because they're finding a lot of value in the one-on-one relationships rather than the big group gatherings, which I think.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's great.
Yep.
All right. Well, we have exhausted our time slot here. So I want to thank you guys for taking the time out to join me. Thanks to our live audience who are streaming this, and this will be part of our podcast family of podcasts. I think it's number 335 podcasts. Pretty good. And so next week I'll be in Texas. I think CJ, you're going. Jim, you're not going.
No.
We'll be out there for the ACBC. There it is. Conference. So I'm teaching a workshop on how trauma-informed care undermines a biblical approach to addiction. So I'm looking forward to teaching that for the first time. And I'm going to teach some stuff related to that for the Addiction Connection on our Counsel platform. If you haven't signed up for that, please do. Counsel is a great way for you to get information and teaching and knowledge, but also to support the Addiction Connection and what we do. And so I'll be putting more content on there. These guys will be doing more content as well. And so I love doing these podcasts. We're going to start doing them live more and more in the days ahead as we work out the kinks. So thanks everybody for your patience. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, CJ, for being here. And we'll end it here. Take care and God bless.
God bless.